Found in the public domain, public access. No copyright infringement was intentional. And we bring this book for this video review to all for educational purposes alone. This book is titled Unearthing the Lost Words of Jesus, The Discovery and Text of the Gospel of Thomas by John Dart and Ray Regert, and commentary by John Dominic Crossan. On the inside jacket it has this note here. The time is just after World War II. The place is Upper Egypt, not far from the pyramids. A group of camel drivers embroiled in a deadly blood feud is secretly digging for fertilizer along the Nile River near the enemy's village when they uncover the earthenware jar. Okay, this is always, to us, always seems to be a different story. Some boy was playing, he was tending to the goats, his father's goats or their group's goats, and for fun he threw a rock inside a cave and he heard a breaking sound, realising it was some sort of vessel. He went in there, found these scrolls. It was cold. They heated some of them up to keep warm, and then next time we've seen another one which says a Bedouin happened to go in there, or maybe he threw a stone or something. They're all these different stories, right? Different people. Now here you have this one where a camel driver might have gone in there and found it. No mention of throwing stones or anything like that. One just walked in there, saw these jars, thinking they were these earthenware jars, thinking they were filled with gold. You get rich, in fear that it might be evil spirits. But one of them smashed open the ancient vessel. Unwittingly, he discovered the greatest collection of apocryphal Christian documents ever found. Among these 4th century papyrus books is the Gospel of Thomas, an unusual manuscript purportedly dictated by Jesus to doubting Thomas. During the next few years, shadowy antiquities dealers will smuggle the priceless manuscripts out of Egypt for sale on the black market, and scholars will proclaim them as significant as the Dead Sea Scrolls. The dramatic narrative history is combined with a special translation of this spiritually enlightened text. The image of Jesus that emerges is strikingly different. We may find the rest on the back. So we're going to sort of time warp and go to the back. See if we can have a look at that one. From the figure portrayed in the New Testament, so that Jesus in one was different from the other. Thomas describes Jesus in pure, simple terms, unadulterated by 2,000 years of myth and interpretation, a wise man with a Zen-like view of the world. John Dart is an award-winning religious writer for the Los Angeles Times. His earlier books, The Laughing Saviour and The Jesus of Heresy and History, were both critically acclaimed. Ray Regert, a member of the Society of Biblical Literature and the American Association of Religion, is an editor of The Lost Gospel Q and Jesus and Buddha, The Parallel Sayings. John Dominic Crossan, a world-renowned expert on the historical Jesus, is the author of The Birth of Christianity and The Historical Jesus. He is a member of the Jesus Seminar. Get back through the time warp to the beginning of the book. Unearthing the Lost Words of Jesus. The discovery of text of the Gospel of Thomas, John Dart and Ray Regert. Commentary, John Dominic Crossan. Table of contents. The discovery. Here's a map of Upper Egypt, the Mediterranean Sea, Israel, etc. And here's a discovery site in the Valley of the Kings, Nag Hammadi around here. Blood feud. December along the Upper Nile River is the ideal time to dig for sabak. The devastating summer heat is gone and the valley soil more pliable than it is in the dry season. December 1945 was particularly auspicious. World War II had ended 4 months before. Egypt was enjoying a welcoming hiatus between the ravages of Rommel and the coming war over the new state of Israel. A rare peace had descended upon the Middle East. A guy called Herzl when the British were about to surrender to the Germans in the First World War, came up with a solution for the Allies who were about to surrender. He approached them and suggested that he would solve their problem. Don't surrender, he'll solve their problem. They will win the war. So those interested said, "Oh, okay, how do you propose that?" He says, "Oh, I want something in return before I give you the solution." So they said, "Oh, what is it?" And he says, "Oh, I want a state in Israel for all the Jews to go back to, that, scattered all over the world, etc., like a home base, homeland." So he says, "Okay, we'll give you that." The British were known to renege and everything they promised, treaties, etc., etc. So how is this going to be any different? So he told them, "I'll tell you how to win the war. Okay, you won't need to surrender. What you do is you bring in the Americans, because they're like all powerful, got a great fighting force with the weaponry, etc., like that." So he did that, and they won the war. The Allies won the war. The British won the war. So he got a state, but he didn't get it in 1917 when he applied for it. It wasn't until later on that Churchill suggested, the Jews need a state of their own, and they didn't really get it till like 1947, 1948. And it seems like they had this 6-day war, or whatever it was, overpowering forces against Palestinians, and they're trying to drive them out. They're planning to drive them out of their Holy Land altogether. But keep pushing them, as they supposedly are doing today. Got them all walled off, and supposedly doing atrocities and all that sort of stuff. So these Palestinians broke out and started to attack Israel, and this, making a statement, well, we want to be free, we want to be like everybody else, have our own state, etc. We don't want to be walled in, trapped like a prison, etc., etc. So they didn't get it to about 47, 48, something like that, 1948. Okay, so these camel drivers digging in the sloping base of a cliff near the river had a personal war to worry over. There were 7 of them, including Muhammad Ali. It's not the boxer, it's quite a popular name amongst the Arabs, and 2 of his brothers. The area where they hunted the nitrate-rich fertilizer, not far from their native village, appears to be unknowing, eye-safe and unassuming. Located 300 miles south of Cairo, it is a spot where the Nile flows from east to west. The small village of Nag Hammadi lies near a bend in the river just a few miles away. So everyone's after that particular earth or soil or clay, whatever it is. It is here that a railroad track marked a borderline as menacing to Muhammad Ali and his band as a line in the sand that had separated German tanks from the forces of the Allies. South of the track, inside the river bend, was the territory of Ali's clan. To the north lay Hamaradum, the fortified village of a warring clan that had already killed Ali's father. The 7 Sabak diggers were in a no man's land between the secure embrace of their village and a region of certain death. The Hurwaris of Hamaradum claimed to be a noble race of Arabs, descended from the Prophet himself, Prophet Muhammad. One thing about them was certain: they hated Ali's people with a blood passion. Ali's brother was the one who discovered the jar. Abu al-Majid, a lad of 15, was working with the older men along a level area near the talus slope that angled up toward a honeycomb cliff. Abu was picking in the soil beneath a barrel-shaped boulder when he unearthed a large reddish-hued urn. It was 2 feet high and had 4 small handles at the top. The mouth was covered by a bowl and sealed with bitumen. It's like a tar they used to use for bricks and all that sort of stuff, way back in the Egyptian days, perhaps building the Tower of Babel as well. It's like an old concrete, an ancient concrete or mortar, goes in between the bricks, makes them stick there. Muhammad Ali immediately took charge. At first, the older brother, though a seasoned man of 26, was too frightened to break open the mysterious container. It was the type of vessel that might contain a jinn, an evil spirit that could appear in human or animal form and exercise supernatural powers over people. But greed eventually overcame fear. Ali reasoned that more likely than the dark demon, the clay jar could be full of gold. He raised his mattock and smashed it. 30 years later, Muhammad Ali still feared that spot. It was September 1975 when an American scholar finally caught up with the elusive villager. Ali's mattock had revealed something far more astounding than a chain, and this tall, angular professor wanted to unravel the mystery surrounding the discovery. Though the site was within 5 miles of Ali's village, the Egyptian had not returned to it for 3 decades. James M. Robinson was a singularly determined man with an intense demeanour and a slight southern drawl. He had graduated with honours from the Columbia Theological Seminary around the time Ali was wielding his digging tool. Now he had found the man whose discovery had determined his academic career. But Ali was adamant. Doggone stubborn, right? Even after revealing a scar above his heart inflicted by a rival clan member and boasting that he would kill his assailant, Ali refused to lead Robinson back along the Nile River. Robinson tried bribery and eventually challenged the villagers' courage before Ali relented. Even then, Ali's conditions were like something out of a Keystone Cops comedy. He would be dressed in American clothes and sit next to Robinson in the back of the Russian-made Jeep in case of gunfire. Robinson would serve as a shield on the way out. The scholar would sit on the side nearest Hamradum. Then for the ride back, Ali would switch seats with him so that Robinson would always be positioned between the Egyptian and the rival village. The day chosen was during the Islamic month of Ramadan, a period of fasting. To further ensure his safety, Ali suggested that they go during the late afternoon, when hunger and thirst would keep his enemies indoors. The driver was to ride past the cliffs without stopping. Ali would point out the place of discovery. As the party drove along the rock face, Ali directed them to a tomb. Robinson later returned without the nervous camel driver and excavated the site for 5 days, coming up with nothing. Another guided search would be necessary. This time Ali stepped from the car, marched forward without hesitation to the barrel-shaped boulder and began digging in the earth, proclaiming it the spot. He told of how his camel had been tethered on the south side of the boulder and recalled that all 7 men had been afraid the rock would collapse on them. Describing the scene years later, Ali admitted it was an image of gold that finally drove him to smash the jar. When the ancient ceramic shattered, it seemed like for a moment that his dream was fulfilled. Tiny yellow flakes filled the air. The Egyptian villager had neither conjured an amber-coloured jinn or struck it rich. In fact, what he had found was priceless. Muhammad Ali, an illiterate field hand who would never afterward be able to remember exactly when the event occurred, had made one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Those gilded flecks were actually tiny fragments of papyrus. Ali's treasure was a collection of 13 books containing over 50 ancient manuscripts, many of them Christian, dating to the 4th century. Among them was the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of over 100 sayings of Jesus purportedly written down by the doubting Thomas. Historians had long known about the Gospel from references in the writings of early church fathers, but in almost 2,000 years a complete copy had never been located. While some of the sayings could be found in the New Testament, many were unique. They portrayed Jesus as a wise man, Zen-like at times in the years that followed. Biblical scholars would claim that some of them were closer to the historical Jesus than the New Testament itself. One person's trash, as they say, is another's treasure. Muhammad Ali was a very disappointed man. What the world called a precious historical discovery, the villager says or saw as pottery shards and a stack of old leather-bound scraps of papyrus. He began tearing the ancient codices apart, intent on sharing them with the other men. Perhaps fearing Ali and considering his offer insincere, the others refused to take them. So Ali unwound his turban, spread out the headdress and stacked the books inside. Swinging the load over one shoulder, he unhobbled his camel and headed back home. There in the room where he housed his animals and feed, Ali dumped the load. During the next decade, as experts and government officials alike began realizing that this humble camel driver's cache was the largest collection of unknown apocryphal Christian writings ever found, antiquities dealers would offer them on the open market from Cairo to New York, and the question of access to the Nag Hammadi library would flare into an international struggle, ultimately involving the United Nations. That night, Ali's mother, in search of kindling for her outdoor clay oven, cast some of them into the fire. Later, the family tried to sell the books, hoping to pick up a few Egyptian pounds. No one was buying. They bartered a few for oranges and cigarettes. Various accounts also mentions them receiving a little tea and a supply of sugar. At some point, Ali learned that documents were written in Coptic, an ancient language used by Christians in Egypt. This meant they probably belonged to the church, which could be trouble for Ali. Possession of such antiquities was a crime, and Muhammad Ali was already being watched by the authorities. In fact, the police were searching his house every night for weapons. It had been less than a year since his father, a night watchman, had killed an intruder who turned out unfortunately to be from the village of Hamradum. Within hours, Ali's father was murdered, shot through the head and dumped next to the body of the man he had killed. Ali's mother overcame her grief long enough to instruct her 7 sons to keep their mattocks sharpened. This was the situation when Muhammad Ali unearthed the manuscripts. About 1 month later, the fears of the police were realised. Someone ran to the Ali home to tell them their father's murderer had fallen asleep nearby. He lay along a dirt road, a jug of sugarcane molasses by his side. James Robinson recounted the horrendous scene after interviewing Muhammad Ali. The sons grabbed their mattocks, fell on the hapless person before he could flee, hacked him up, cut open his heart, and divided it among them, ate it raw, the ultimate act of blood vengeance. Savage. The French man in the museum. With his brooding eyebrows and thin moustache, Jean Dorés cut a striking profile. His thick dark hair was sharply parted to one side, etc. etc. Goes on about that guy. He spent the previous year studying and lecturing in Paris, steeping himself in the history of early Christianity in Egypt. Now, the French Institute of Archaeology in Cairo had invited him to spend 3 months exploring for Christian remains in a region 300 miles south of the city. Christianity had put down some of its earliest roots in Egypt. Long before the Muslims arrived in the 7th century, Christian monks under Saint Pachomius launched a building campaign that developed countless monasteries and convents along the Upper Nile and Red Sea. Several were located along the northern shores of the Bend in the Nile River, dating to Nakamari, and so forth. And Frenchmen wandered through the ancient quarter past the huddle of dark churches. This, he realised, was the centre of Coptic Christianity during the early years of the religion. As Rome and Constantinople became the capitals of the Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches, a different brand of Christianity developed there. Today, over 6 million people, fully 10% of Egypt's population, are Coptic Orthodox Christians. They share a national culture with their Muslim compatriots, but maintain a separate spiritual identity. Some claim that the crosses they wear around their neck or tattooed on their wrists, similar in design to Egyptian arcs, represent the first crosses. Others point out that the Bible was translated into Coptic, the local language of the time, before it appeared in Latin, and so forth. Hamradum. Dorés purchased the text. Mina told Dorés, or somebody had purchased the text. Mina told Dorés the year before the Frenchmen arrived. Someone had shown them to a member of the museum board who had an interest in Coptic, and he sent the man on to Togo Mina. Since then, Mina continued. He had located other manuscripts held by a Belgian antiquities dealer named Albert Ayed. Ayed had a shop in the section of the city called Khan Khalil. Would Dorés be interested in seeing them? The French man responded eagerly, and the two men jumped into Mina's car. Mina switching to the dark tinted sunglasses he always wore when driving. Ayed was good enough to let him look at the manuscripts he had bought, Dorés recalled. In appearance and content, they resembled the museum's papyri, though the pages were in poor condition, and so forth. Okay, and he goes into great detail on those. I went from surprise to astonishment, Dorés recalled, encountering sensationally attractive titles. There was the letter of Peter to Philip, purportedly written by St. Peter himself, as well as the revelation of Adam to his son Seth, in which the first man described how God created him. And in this pile was the Gospel of Thomas. Dorés began reading a text that would become known as the Fifth Gospel. Among the sayings it contained were many unknown to Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. These are the secret words, he recorded, that the living Jesus spoke. Dorés saw very few of those secret words, or of other manuscripts either. He was allowed to make no more than a rapid inspection of them, he recalled. Maria Dattari and Faustine Tano guarded their possessions jealously, punctuating their suspicions with the air raid signals, which blared at what seemed to Dorés the slightest provocation, announcing that Egypt was at war with Israel and cutting short the few evenings he was permitted to peruse the manuscripts. Smuggling those sacred texts. Had to get them out of there, take them to a museum, I suppose. The Coptic Museum would possess the only complete collection of sayings by Jesus ever found, but Mina's coup could not match the political catastrophe that fell on December 28, 1948. That day, a member of the radical Muslim Brotherhood assassinated the Egyptian Prime Minister, creating havoc in the capital. The Coptic Museum would have to wait for the formation of a new government, while it waited another set of ancient texts slipped from the museum's grasp. Albert Aid had once bragged to Mina and Dores about plans to smuggle his manuscripts out of the country, past completely inefficient government agents. That winter he carried through on the boast. As he left the country, the Belgians showed the Antiquities Department an assortment of carved figures, coins and other items he intended to sell abroad. Nothing the authorities would want to retain in Egypt. What he didn't show them, and that what eluded their oversight, he was soon offering on the open market in the United States. I'd asked $20,000 from the University of Michigan Library, an institution known for its papyrus collections, but they considered his price too steep. In New York, with the Gospel of Truth and other texts in hand, he approached the Paul Mellon-funded Bollingen Foundation, dropping his price to $12,000. Frustrated by the Foundation's refusal even to keep the manuscripts in its safe, he departed for Brussels, where he put his pages in a safety deposit box. By the next year, Ed was dead, and according to one authority, it was not known where the codex was to be found. Meanwhile, Maria Tatare was stopped at the Cairo airport while trying to remove her papyri from Egypt. She was headed for Rome, according to one report, to present the collection to the Pope. The Egyptian Minister of Education informed her she could not export the codices and offered to buy all 8 for 300 Egyptian pounds each. Tatare politely declined. The authorities seized the collection, telling the Italian woman and her business manager that the rest would assay the collection. For a time it appeared that the new government would pay them a fair price, 50,000 Egyptian pounds maybe, or perhaps, but on July 25th, 1949, that regime also collapsed. The next act in this melodrama seems drawn from the final scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark. In that movie, archaeologist adventurer Indiana Jones has survived a pit filled with poisonous snakes, been dragged behind a Nazi army truck, and escaped a supernatural firestorm. He has risked death and dismemberment to recover the Ark of the Covenant, the 4,000-year-old sacred chest that Moses carried out of Egypt. Acting in patriotic fashion, Indiana presents his find to the US Army. The government, instead of announcing this historic discovery to the world, crates up the Ark, assigns an inventory number, and buries it deep within the bowels of a storage warehouse. As the final credits roll, it appears the Ark may rest unseen for 7 or more millennia. Change the crate to a piece of luggage, reduce the time lapse to 7 years, and we are back to the story of the Gospel of Thomas. The book, together with the other parts of Muhammad Ali's discovery that had been confiscated by the Egyptian government, was packed away by the Department of Antiquities as a temporary measure, and so forth.